So, as Marvel ushers in a new family for the Fantastic Four, which we're going to get in 2025, I figured maybe I should go back and watch the other one. I have seen the ones from the 2000s, but I've never actually seen the 2015 version. I did watch it, so I have some thoughts. So let's talk about it. Hello, my name is Diamond, aka Lady Leo. Welcome to my channel. If you are a brand new viewer, welcome back if you are a returning viewer. I know it's been a couple weeks since I put out a video. Sorry about that. I do have a life outside of making videos and a full-time job, and sometimes I'm just pretty slammed. And then by the time the weekend comes, I'm pretty exhausted. So I did take like 2 weekends back to back in a row where I didn't really film anything. But I do have a few things I'll be filming this weekend, so I'm back. So that new version of the Fantastic Four we're going to be getting in 2025, by the time that movie comes out, the latest version of the Fantastic Four will be 10 years old. So this is the version that came out in 2015. And I actually never saw this one. I remember hearing that it was not good, and I don't know, I just never saw it in theaters. And I feel like I'm of the opinion that anytime I see like a superhero film, specifically an origin film that's under 2 hours, if it's like an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes, I instantly get nervous because that's not a lot of time to sort of set up the characters, you know, in terms of your version of the characters, as well as set up your villain and resolve it. So when I see a superhero origin film under like 2 hours, like 90 minutes long, I get nervous. This movie's like an hour and 40 minutes long, and it's an interesting watch. I'm glad I didn't go see it in the theater because I feel like I would be really mad about it. So we've got a pretty stacked cast. You've got Miles Teller playing Reed Richards, Kate Mara as Sue Storm, Toby Cabell as Victor Von Doom, Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, and Jamie Bell as the Thing. And then this is directed by Josh Trank. I feel like the only movie that I know from him is Chronicle, which is, it's like a found footage superhero kind of thing. I remember really liking it, and I think Michael B. Jordan was in that one too. It's been a long time since I've seen Chronicle, but I'm pretty sure it was Michael B. Jordan and like definitely Dane DeHaan. But yeah, so this was definitely back when Fox had the rights to these characters, and if I understand like the licensing for studios like Fox and Sony, they have to make a movie every so many years, or a TV show. They have to do something with the characters so that they keep the rights to continue using them. Otherwise, they revert back to Marvel. So if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of how it works. So this is probably we got to make a movie, because if not, it's going back to Marvel. I mean, it went back to Marvel anyway. But anyway, so we start off with Reed and Ben in childhood. They are working on a teleporter. Okay. I will be honest, like, I used to read the comics pretty religiously when I was a kid. Well, maybe not religiously. I read them sort of on and off. So I do know of the Fantastic Four, but like I'm not a diehard in terms of like, this is their origins. I feel like their origins had to do with going maybe to the space, something to do with space, which is fine. They start off with Reed and Ben, and in childhood, I don't know, they're like somewhere in the 7 to 10 range. They're building a teleporter, and then they manage to get it to work. By them, I mean really mostly Reed. And then 7 years later, they're at a science fair where their fifth grade teacher is grading it. I'm laughing because the movie does get a laugh out of me here, because Reed literally makes something teleport in front of this teacher's eyes. He takes like a little paper plane from another kid, teleports it to somewhere else, brings it back. And the teacher's like, this is science fiction, this is magic. I'm just laughing because I'm just like, wow. What would impress you, sir, if a child, well, he's not a child anymore, but like if somebody who's like under the age of 18 is able to make a teleporter work, something that doesn't exist yet, and you're not impressed? I don't know what would impress you, but I just found that hilarious because he's like, you're disqualified. I don't see any real science here. There's just magic. Clearly, I got a good laugh out of that one. So then, you know, you have Reed and Ben. They meet Sue and her dad because for some reason they're at a science fair recruiting, but they recruit them. They go to the Baxter Foundation, which is in a high rise building, I guess. They don't really explain what this foundation is. Is this like a college scholarship? Is Reed still in high school? I think the implication is that he's probably in his last year of high school. So I don't know. They don't really explain what the Baxter Foundation is. It's just, hey, we see this teleporter that you made. We've been working on the same thing, coincidentally. So yeah, why don't you come to our highly funded lab where you can do this work under our guise, you know? So would you like that? Reed does like that, so he goes with them. So as we go there, we also meet Victor Von Doom, who's at the university on, I don't know, in his own room brooding because he's in a dark room doing a bunch of stuff. I guess Reed's mad because he hasn't been able to crack interdimensional travel and Reed Richards has, or something. I don't know. I guess that's supposed to be like the rivalry between the two of them. But anyway, we got to speed this along. We only have an hour and 40 minutes, okay? So before we get back to like the science montage that we're going to get in a second, I feel like Reed says something to Sue says something to Richard that I just was like, I wrote down in my notes because I was just like, what? So essentially, like, both Reed thinks he's been working on a teleporter that teleports something to another location on Earth, like something in the desert, but really he's been transporting something to another dimension. And I guess I don't know why they think this is another dimension, right? Like he could be transporting something to another planet within our same dimension, but they make the distinction of saying that it's interdimensional. So I guess I'm trying to understand, like, what would tell them that this exists in another dimension and not just another planet within our own dimension, our own galaxy, you know what I mean? Or another galaxy, which is still within our own dimension. But anyway, I digress. So I gotta, I'm getting off topic, but essentially what Sue says to him when she's showing him like the work that they've done, she's like, yeah, we sent a drone through our teleporter to this other dimension that they call Planet Zero. And the drone didn't come back, but we got footage. Okay, I have a couple of questions, and I'm not even like someone who's like scientifically inclined. I'm just a regular bish. But how exactly do you get video from another dimension, right? Like if you go out into space, the further away you get from Earth, the longer it takes for a signal to be relayed. You know what I mean? So like if you go to Mars, it takes months to have a communication with NASA or whoever it would be at the time if we go to Mars. I'm just saying that it's not an instant communication, but somehow they've cracked interdimensional travel and they can also get video and audio footage from another dimension, but they can't figure out how to bring something back. Just so when she says that, and it comes into play a little bit later on, but I'm just like, how exactly do you get video from another dimension? Like, I just don't understand how the drone didn't come back, but you managed to get the video feed. It's a small thing, but it annoyed me, so I wrote it down in my notes. Moving along, we got to introduce Johnny, you know what I mean? Because we only have an hour and 40 minutes. So Johnny is over here doing some street racing, and he crashes his car, and that's how his dad gets him to come back to the foundation. Next, maybe 10 minutes are like a full-on science montage, but they are not saying anything about like what they're actually doing. So it's like whiteboard, people talking, building things. They don't tell you how much time is passing. They're not explaining at all what they're doing. It's just a science montage to move time along because we don't have a lot of time, people. You got to keep in mind, we got an hour and 40 minutes. The whole time this science montage is going on, I keep thinking to myself, I wonder how they're going to bring Ben back into this, because I guess it makes sense for everybody to be here except Johnny. They haven't really set him up to be scientifically inclined, but it doesn't matter. I just think, okay, so you've got all the other characters in one place except for Ben. How's Ben going to come back in? But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was just thinking to myself, like, some point they do become the Fantastic Four. I feel like you kind of forget that this movie is about the Fantastic Four because it has this sort of somber quality to it. There's like not a lot of happiness going on in the movie. It's like a very dark tone, like actually, and just like the way the movie looks, like it has this sort of mildly dark filter on it, and then it's just tonally it just feels very dark. There's no happiness, there's no joy that's going on in the movie. It's just like an observation on my part. And before we get to like the next scene, I have to say that I find this movie to be like incredibly boring. Dialogue in this film, it's really wooden and just boring. And then on top of that, I don't feel like any of the cast has any sort of like natural synergy with each other. And I'm talking about like the people who are actually going to be the Fantastic Four and like Victor Von Doom. Nobody feels like they flow with each other. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get any sibling vibes off of Johnny and Sue. And I don't know, I just feel like everybody's there, but nobody's like enjoying being there. And from what I heard about the behind the scenes, it makes sense. I think a lot of people said that this was a really terrible experience filming from them. But yeah, I just don't think, outside of that fact, I don't think the cast they don't have any natural chemistry with each other. And a lot of people will say that like that the 2000s Fantastic Four's movies are not good, but relatively speaking, they sure are fun. I love those movies. Are they amazing? No, they're not amazing, but they're definitely way more fun than this slog fest. Okay, what's the next thing on my notes? Let me check. Okay, now it's time to test our interdimensional portal situation. Got a monkey on the ready. We send the monkey through. He comes back alive. No issues. Great. Now it's time to go straight into human trials. We're not going to do any other testing. So what's his name? I don't actually know what his name is, but he's like the administrator, if you will, for the Baxter Foundation. You know what I mean? Like, he's like the board. He represents the board. He's like, good work, guys. Now it's time to get NASA involved. And Victor Von Doom is like, he says some really crazy stuff. I wish I wrote it down. He's like something about waterboarding. And I was like, what does that have to do with NASA? I was just like, wow, you're laying it on really thick, my guy. Because the administrative person, he makes a very good point. Like, none of these people are actually astronauts. They are scientists who built this machine. But that's a very different thing than like being an astronaut. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different skill set. So I'm not sure why they think they should be the ones to actually go through the machine. But that leads to the debauchery that comes next. So everybody outside of Sue stupidly I think they were drinking and they're having a conversation, and basically all the boys decide, yeah, we're gonna be first. We're gonna travel through the thing that's only been tested once in terms of traveling to another dimension. And then Ben's like, not Ben, and this is how Reed gets Ben back in. He's like, yo, hey, what's up, Ben? Gonna do some interdimensional travel, and you're my friend. I need you to have my back. Ben says yes. It's just, the security at the Baxter Foundation is light because he's able to get Ben into the building. There's no security at this, what I imagine is an incredibly expensive device. There's no security here, at least not in terms of like physical security, right? And Sue is over here on her laptop. I swear to God, there's a lot of... I feel like a 30% of Kate Mara in this film is just like staring at a screen. So she's staring at a screen doing something, and then she gets a notification at the exact moment that they're about to transport, and nobody else gets this notification outside of her to tell her that the quantum tunnel is active. So she rushes over to the quantum tunnel. It's too late. They've gone to planet Zero. So they go to an alien planet and decide to walk around, which, I mean, I would never be in the pod to do that because there's just not enough information that I would know about traveling to an alien planet. And even if I did, I'd be like, well, did it? I saw it. It's time to go back. But Victor Von Doom is like, let's walk around a little bit. So they walk around. The planet has this like green goo on it. He falls into the goo, as one does when you are stupidly walking around an alien planet. He falls into the goo and allegedly dies. And then the others managed to get back to the teleporter and send it back. They never explain how that's possible. Like, they were able to remote control the launch, but also from the other side of the dimension that they're in, they were able to get back to where they were before. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So they do this thing where as they're going through, this is how they get their powers, right? So like Johnny's capsule is on fire, so Johnny becomes the Human Torch. Ben's capsule fills with rocks and he becomes the Thing. I don't really understand how Mr. Fantastic power of stretch comes into play. I guess you could make the leap that prior to them getting in the tube, he was trying to help Victor. But that's a pretty big leap. And then when the tube comes back, it sends out like this shockwave, which interacts with Sue. And that's how she gets her powers. How much longer do we have in the movie? I don't know why, but like for this movie, I swear that I kept checking the actual time because I kept thinking to myself, like nothing has really happened, you know, like we've met a couple people, but they only get their powers like 45 minutes before the end of the movie. So I'm thinking to myself, how the is this going to be wrapped up in like 40 minutes? And by the time they get their powers, they spend like another 10 to 15 minutes, not necessarily in a training montage. They're actually kind of being experimented on because they have these powers and they're trying to get them to control it, which again has a very like dark and somber feel. It doesn't feel like it seems a little bit like torture. So it seems a little bit like torture. And then you have Reed, who just manages to like peace out, leaving them there for, I don't know, a while. I think they said it's been a couple of months, 4 or 5 months, something like that. So Reed's been off on his own for a while the others have all been in this testing facility for a long time. Again, still trying to understand how we're wrapping this up because we haven't introduced Victor at this point as like Victor Von Doom. Like we've introduced him as a character, but not as the villain. And they haven't had anything to do. They just got their powers. So I just keep waiting. I'm just like, is something happening? We only have 30. It's maybe soon? I don't. Okay, let's keep going. Speaking of Victor, now that they've got their powers, it's time to bring Victor back in because, like I said, we're getting to the end of the movie and nothing's happened yet. They haven't had a chance to fight anybody, use their powers. So I guess what ends up happening is the administrative guy wants to make more of them, even though everything that happened to them are all pure accidents. So I'm not sure why he thinks he could replicate the same effect and like get more superheroes. I'm not sure why you would want more people that you can't control, but okay. Anyway, so essentially they want to be able to go back to Planet Zero so they can make more superheroes, I think. I didn't write it down in my notes, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But it's just about time for Victor to come back. They go back to Planet Zero without any incident. They find Victor immediately and they bring him back. The suit that he was wearing is kind of fused to him, which I can't decide if I like the way he looks or not. I mean, his mouth doesn't move, so I don't know. I feel like it kind of does look cool. So yeah, Victor's back and it's time to start popping some heads. Which is literally what goes down. I guess when I was always thinking of Victor Doom, I always thought his power was like technopy, like techno telepathy or something like that, where he could talk to machines, control machines. But like in this movie, he's almost like a telepath because he's literally killing people. I don't know, with whatever power. I mean, this is a Fox movie. Fox tend to do a lot of things where it's like, hey, this may not be necessarily in this person's power set, but it looks cool. I kind of hate that. It's just like, if it's not in their power set, don't do it. Just like keep it in their power set. But Fox does that all the time where they're just like adding things to what people don't naturally do. So Victor's over here popping heads and the other members of the Fantastic Four, they just happen to be in the same facility chilling out. They don't actually know Victor's on the loose. They start running into each other. And then Victor goes back to Planet Zero because he wants to open a portal to Earth for world domination. I don't remember if he said why he wanted to open a portal to Earth. I'm just gonna assume world domination. It's a pretty go-to standard thing for villains. So yeah, then we have a fight that ensues. They get to use their powers individually, a little team action, which I genuinely don't care about. And yeah, they defeat him. I don't know what I expected from that movie because, again, I've never seen it and I hadn't heard about it in years. I remember that I think the director, he did an interview, or maybe he put something on his social media about like saying that the movie was terrible, or I guess saying that like he made a better version of the movie but they would never see it or something like that. I remember him doing something like that like the day before the movie dropped. But again, for me, there's a lot of signs that this wasn't going to be a good movie. And I don't even know how to sum up what I think about this movie. I think that it doesn't even feel like a completed movie. It feels like the first act of like you know how like on a TV show, sometimes they'll do like a 2 or 3 part season finale before you break for the next season. That's kind of what this feels like. It feels like parts from multiple last episodes of a season, but like jam-packed into one. It's simultaneously boring and slow, but at the same time it moves pretty fast in terms of like, okay, we got to introduce you to these people, and then we got to move to this place, and then it's time to do this. But like there's not a lot that actually happens. Like, and like I said, people can say that they don't like the 2000s Fantastic Fours, but if they're going to sit here and say that those movies are worse than this, those people, they're lying to you, okay? Those movies are fun. They are lighthearted, and they're just really fun to watch. I really enjoy watching those. Between the two, The Silver Surfer is my favorite one because once you break out of like the freshman movie, you get to have a lot more fun when you're getting into like the sophomore one. So yeah, I think this movie is pretty terrible. It's hard to know if the movie would have been good if Josh Trank was allowed to make like his version of it. I do think when it comes to any kind of film, specifically with the superhero genre, I don't know why I can't say the word genre, but I feel like studios love to poke. They poke, some more than others, because I'm convinced that every studio, Marvel, Warner Brothers, Sony, they have a department and their job is to comb through the comics, and they're just like, listen, people who read the comics, they want to see this cover, you know, in film. So like, can we do that? And that's their job. Their job is to put things in from the comics that are cool, that are from different storylines, different retcons. And that's kind of what I feel like the studio does. That amongst other things. I feel like they're just like, listen, the audience is not going to get this. You know, you need to add this and this. Because I know this movie went through extensive reshoots. It's hard to know, like, well, I mean, we know with the ones with Kate Mara because she's wearing a different wig. But I know the movie went through reshoots, but it's hard to know like what the original vision of the movie is. And this is something that I also don't understand from a studio, right? So if you talk to a director, or a director pitches a movie to you, you read the script and you're happy with it, why do you sit there and want to change things as the process goes on, right? Because you read the script and you hire the director so you know their body of work. But if you're going to sit there, let them film everything, and then after they're done, just be like, well, we want you to do these things. Realistically, you knew that you weren't going to like that anyway, right? Because it's within the vision of what they said it was going to be. So like, I don't understand. Like, if you like the director and you like the script, what do you want changes for? And I think that's why when I think of when a movie goes through reshoots, it always makes me nervous, because to me, it says the studio didn't like something and they want to change something, which doesn't usually go well, right? Like Dark Phoenix, which is another conversation, but Dark Phoenix, that whole train thing was the studio. I guess, I wonder if there was an action scene, or if there was a different action scene there, because that was like the most action packed of that movie. But anyway, yeah, I do think this movie is quite terrible. To me, it misses what I like about the Fantastic Four, which is like the team element. And what I liked about the 2000s movie is that I felt like everybody played off of each other really well. They had really good natural chemistry as the Fantastic Four, but I also liked them individually as their characters. And I just didn't feel any of that here. Like everybody is here and like doing their best, but nobody feels like they want to be here or that they enjoy being here. And to me, that kind of like comes across in their performance. So, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty low bar. We can definitely get higher from here. We can only get higher from here, right, Marvel? We can't do any lower than this. They picked a really interesting lineup for the Fantastic Four. So I'm really excited to see what they do with this movie and how that'll factor into the greater MCU. I would love to see Marvel make a movie that is sort of a standalone with some elements that connect to the MCU. Because I think sometimes they make a movie and they get bogged down in wanting to make sure it connects. And sometimes you can lose like making just like a good movie in and of itself. So I just want a good movie. I know we're going to see the fruits of the labor in terms of the connections to the MCU as we go into Kang Dynasty, which I think it's still called the Kang Dynasty, and Secret Wars. So we'll see what happens. All in all, I did think this movie was pretty terrible. It's just really boring on top of that. Like I kept checking it because I'm thinking, is anything going to happen? And two, how much more time do we have? Because I'm getting tired. But it's funny, for a movie that's only like an hour and 40 minutes, it definitely feels longer than that because there's not a lot of stuff that goes on in that movie. And I'm glad they were all able to cover, except Josh Trank. I mean, he's not really making stuff that much anymore. But yeah, the rest of the cast was able to recover. Well, those are my thoughts. You can check me out on all my socials. I thank you so much for watching. Catch you later. Bye.